What changes can be seen in the food industry during the first half of the 20th century? A discussion of the food industry from World War I to World War II would take an entire course of its own. Key topics would most likely include America's involvement in the First World War, the stock market crash, the Great Depression, Prohibition and its repeal, the New Deal, the Dust Bowl, World War II, and the home front. I'm going to attempt to touch on a few topics that are not covered in this week's readings or other videos. Around 1910, wheat became the new cash crop for many farming families in the Midwest and in the Pacific Northwest. Railroads crossed the land, providing a highway for grain elevators. Some towns had been built around train stations and grain silos. Wheat brought in more money than other grains such as barley and lentil. During World War I, the government set a standard price for a bushel of wheat, but in the short period of time between 1919 and 1921, that price fell to merely half the amount. The Great Depression began in 1929 with the stock market crash. According to many, it did not truly end until World War II. By 1932, many banks across the nation had closed their doors. People lost their savings, and in many cases, lost their homes or farms. At probably the lowest point of the Great Depression, over 12 million people were unemployed. Families could not even afford a place to live. Families couldn't buy goods, they couldn't buy services, not to mention the fact that they couldn't even buy adequate food to eat. As a result, most businesses had to close. In 1933, FDR's New Deal introduced many programs that benefited farmers across the nation, including the Agricultural Adjustment Act, or AAA. The federal government was now encouraging farmers to grow fewer crops, and was even paying some farmers to destroy portions of their crops. The government also purchased farm animals, including millions of pigs, only to slaughter them and can them as food for the unemployed. With less produce on the market, seen as a decrease in supply, crop prices would rise due to resulting demand. Much like a seller's market in real estate, farmers would benefit while consumers would pay the price. Though many farmers liked the policy, many opposed the government policy. 3 years after it started, the AAA ended as the U.S. Supreme Court declared it unconstitutional. With the Agricultural Adjustment Act, the federal government violated the democratic ideal of federalism by interfering with states' powers to regulate agricultural trade within the states. In a case where things seemed to go from bad to worse, many farmers who lost government aid with the end of the AAA now lost their farms due to dust storms. The period called the Dust Bowl was where prevailing winds picked up and took with them the unanchored soil, blowing dust into clouds that often turned the daytime skies into night. 4 factors that caused the Dust Bowl include the modernization of farming with the use of gasoline-powered tractors and the combine harvester to increase speed and efficiency, the rapid conversion of arid grassland to cultivated cropland in the Great Plains, inadequate use of farming methods to prevent wind erosion, and a severe drought throughout the Midwest from Texas and up into the Canadian prairies. The damage from the dust storms affected over 100 million acres, destroying farms in parts of Colorado, Kansas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Texas. This forced over 350,000 farmers to abandon their farms, mostly to migrate to California. The iconic American writer John Steinbeck
wrote several popular books depicting this period of time.
In the 1940s, Pasco was a prosperous farming town in the southeastern part of Washington state. Near the junction of the Columbia and Snake Rivers, the farmlands and orchards of Pasco, as well as Richland and Kennewick, took advantage of the irrigation afforded by the Grand Coulee Dam upriver. Constructed between 1933 and 1942, the dam was one of the many public works projects of the New Deal.
But in a turn of events that played out with similarities to the end of the previously mentioned New Deal program, only 1 year passed after the completion of the Grand Coulee Dam before some 1,200 landowners in that area would learn that they too would have to abandon their land.
In March of 1943, during World War II, the U.S. government sent registered letters with the title Declaration of Taking to the farmers. Though many farmers who had farmed these lands for generations protested and even resisted the small amounts of money offered by the government, they had no choice but to pack up and leave in 60 days.
A top-secret government program brought construction and nearly 500,000 people to the area. Within a year, farmland was replaced by government buildings, roads, and homes. Then, on August 6, 1945, the local newspapers carried the headlines, "It's atomic bombs! President Truman releases secret of Hanford Project." For some of those who gave up their farms, sacrifice was replaced with pride. One final point I want to make also pertains to another form of federal government involvement in the food industry during World War II. During the war, processing and packaging plants in many sectors, including the food industry, focused their machines and resources and manpower on building armaments and supporting the troops. The industry and the federal government urged American consumers to save, to contribute, and to plant victory gardens. At the same time, the government needed strong, healthy men in uniform to win the war. This had two implications.
1. The military found too many potential recruits to be too weak or malnourished for enlistment. The government began a focus on nutrition, programs and education for families and schools across the nation, all in the name of our national defense. 2. As men left their jobs for the military, many industry hired women and minorities in numbers never before seen in America. Think Rosie the Riveter. Similarly, immigration numbers from the Philippines and Mexico saw a brief rise as farm labor was in desperate demand.
During the early half of the 20th century, the United States faced many economic problems and social issues at home while engaging in wartime commitments around the globe. American farmers faced new challenges, new regulations, and new responsibilities. Many lost their farms. American consumers had no option but to decrease their spending during the Great Depression and during World War II. The federal government now regulated many aspects of the food industry to better meet domestic and foreign needs. Often, these regulations resulted in drastic changes to geography, farm economics, the food industry, and society as a whole.